listening to the Gettin Salty Experience podcast.
You're listening to History with Hashagen, as presented by the Gettin Salty Experience.
Wow.
Oh my.
Wow. Oh my. You got your own title now.
Hey,
Exciting.
You got your own show opening.
Fancy.
I still like the Old Man and the Sea better.
Yeah. Yep. Or the Gordon's Fisherman. I don't know.
Gordon Fisherman.
One or the other. Welcome back to another episode of History with Hashagen. Ruff, how lucky are we? Do we get to see
Pretty lucky.
with the double L, the living legend, and we
I
get
think
to
it's
absorb all of
definitely
this
7. If you're on the craps, you're throwing a 7 or 11 right now, baby.
Right.
You are right, and Tanky's sitting with us. He loves these.
Right. Dude, how lucky am I? Like,
Yeah.
how lucky am
I
I?
don't even type it out. Who's available for History with Head? Me.
There.
Available.
This is where I thrive, baby.
You could see you could see it in his face. He's all smitten. He's just
He should be.
That's right.
He wasn't smitten, But you know what we got, Ruff, that we'll always take with us for the rest of our lives.
we saw him in his tidy
We
whities.
saw him in his tidy whities when we went away with him, bro.
Look at his face. He's like he's
It's amazing how the show goes right to the gutter, bro. Right from history, right to the gutter. Right?
Well, you know what? That's historic because I don't have them anymore.
Nice.
1 minute, 45 seconds in.
He's going
Rashed.
with the
right.
rescue thong now, the blue rescue thong.
Pull up.
Yeah.
Low
yeah.
terrain. Pull up.
Yeah.
Pull up.
Welcome back to this mess here, Paul. We appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure.
What do we? Oh, you know what? We got to do the pledge. We can't. We got to be patriotic before I get out of the
we
gate.
got this. Stand by. Let me scroll down here to it. Here we go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent day.
Wonderful.
So, who are we talking about today, Paul? Or what?
Yeah, today's character, today's legend we'll talk about is John Howe.
John Howe.
You could put up that title. There he is.
Yep.
John P. Howe.
What year are we talking about here? That looks pretty old.
Yeah. Well, you see, that's a good eye. That's the old Civil War cap that they're wearing.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Before they changed hats. That's the style that I believe the Navy wore in the Civil War. So John joins the FDNY on January 1st, 1890. It's a horse-drawn fire department. No motorized vehicles yet. It's going to be a while before they come. So what they did in those days is you got assigned to a company as an ununiformed firefighter. It was like a little probationary period, and you just went in your street clothes. They gave you a helmet. You could borrow somebody's helmet and a coat and some boots, and jump on the truck, kid. We'll show you what to do. Hold on to my coat. One of those things.
Get your shovel and your broom and start cleaning up the horse shit in the back, kid. All right?
Yeah. And then they would send them off to probie school after they were in a little bit. You would go back and forth to probie school, working nights in the firehouse. Hardly ever went home. So the cool thing about
school goes that far back, Paul. I mean,
yeah. They had a organized training almost from the 1870s. Yeah.
Where was it located then? I know at one point ladder school was up at 16 Truck, but where was, like, do we know the original training was?
Yeah, before that there was this place called the Old Sugar House on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. It was some, I guess, an old vacant building that the fire department could use or whatever. And they used it there. They also did training in the quarters of Engine 47. And then 16 Truck. Yeah, that was when that was a new building. That was headquarters and the training school, fire college, all that stuff. Rescue 1 got their training there, the smoke helmets, the whole thing. That's
When these
And it was
guys
like that for a long time. John Driscoll, who I worked with, he went to his Proby school there. I think it was before they went to Welfare Island. So, they used it for a long time.
So in 1890, was the New York City Fire Department generally Manhattan at this point? There's nothing outside of these boroughs at this point, or
No, there's stuff in other boroughs. Brooklyn's its own city, so they're doing their own thing. The chief in charge, there was a deputy chief in charge of Brooklyn and Queens. Hypothetically, everybody's in one department. Honestly, Brooklyn and Queens kind of get left out. They're a little bit on their own. And then, it's Manhattan and a little bit of the Bronx you hear about. But Bronx was still not very well built up. There's probably little towns and stuff like that, villages. But Brooklyn was a legit city with some high-rise buildings, a big waterfront. And Manhattan was it. It was that's where it was happening. Downtown Manhattan, if you were a firefighter, unless you lived in Brooklyn, then there were spots in Brooklyn where you wanted to get work. But they always used to pride themselves on saying, I worked my whole career below 14th Street.
Right.
That's where all the work was, down below Canal Street, especially the Hell's 100 Acres. But it got that name later, but all those fires accumulated from years and years. And the 1890s, it was all part of it.
That's how Manhattan built, right? It started downtown and worked its way up.
Worked its way up, yeah. As a matter of fact, if you go all the way back to the origins of the city, with Peter Stuyvesant and all that, Wall Street was a wall. On the far side of the street, they built a giant stockade fence that went all the way along to keep the Native Americans from coming over and going back on their land. So,
pillaging, maybe, I don't know.
Wall.
We know how to do it.
Yeah.
Canal Street was a canal. They filled it in. But now 1890, it's moving right along. The buildings are starting to get bigger. The fire department's doing more and more work. And one of the interesting things is John Howe gets promoted or gets assigned to the fire department in 1890. And one of the guys that would end up in the company with him and would go to Proby school and all that was this fellow called William Guerin. And William Guerin, you see him in photo number 2 there. He ended up being a deputy chief as well, used to teach in the fire college, and he had a parallel career. I think he got promoted right before Howe, so he always had a head start on him by a rank. I think there were similar ranks at certain times, but it looks like Guerin rode higher on the list or whatever and started out a little sooner. But back in 1890, in January, they're both probies, and they're on the rig, and they go to a fire on East 28th Street, real smoky job. And as we've talked about every single time, I know it almost sounds redundant, but you just went into the smoke until you got knocked out, and then they dragged you out and somebody took your place.
When men were men.
They were going in, and they were told to go back out and take a breather. Somebody was relieving them, and they get outside, and John Howe, who's a brand new guy, he's only a couple of weeks in the company, realizes that Guerin's not with them, and he goes back in to the smoke, crawling around on his belly. He's able to find Guerin and drag him out, and he saves his friend's life.
Grab with a couple of weeks on the job.
Yeah, 2 weeks on the job. And as they did quite frequently in those days, that was like, okay, thanks. No write-up, no nothing. You go risk your life to save the guy. But, that's just part of the job. Firefighters getting knocked unconscious. That's what happens. So, attaboy. But imagine, though, you're in ladder 7, which is where they both worked. And here's this kid, like right off the bat, he makes a spectacular grab of another guy. And it's like, we got to keep our eye on this guy because he knows what he's doing, or apparently he's a fast learner.
Right.
So he learns the trade. He goes through Proby school. He's doing well. And then he starts really making his bones January 2nd in 1894. Ladder 7 rolls out at 11 o'clock at night, and they go to 74 Pearl Street. And that was a 5-story brick building. And ladder 7 arrives. They start throwing ladders. And they're trying their best to get these people out of this building. The place is ripping. Everything's built out of wood, these old tenements. So, this is off to the races on arrival. And he goes up a portable ladder, gets to the fire escape, and he goes into the 4th floor, and he's able to find an elderly woman. So he wraps her up in a blanket, brings her back out to the fire escape. And just as he does, the windows on the floor below fail. So now all fire's coming out on him. Luckily, there was a line that they were stretching, the backup line to go in to follow the attack line. They're about to go in, and they see the fire coming out the window. So they're able to push the fire back in the window with this line. So Howe and the lady can get off of there.
Yeah.
So they're able to get down under cover of a hose line. He's able to get her down to the street. He gets burned. She gets burned. But in typical fashion, he keeps working. Now, these guys didn't stop for burns. They didn't stop for cuts. If you're unconscious, you slowed down a little bit.
So you regain consciousness, and then you continue.
You got back to it. So right after he takes a quick breather, they see that there's another bunch of people at a trap. So him and this other guy grab a portable ladder. You got to remember, these are not nice, relatively light aluminum ladders. These are heavy wooden ladders. And the extension ladders or the straight ladders, they have those truss beams on them. They're really, really heavy duty and they weigh a lot. But that's what they had, so that's what they use. He and this other firefighter go up, and they go to the elevated railroad tracks, and they bridge the ladder across from the elevated railroad tracks into the window of the tenement. And Howe gets out there, and he goes across, finds a woman and a child, comes back out, hands them to the other guy. And now they're amazed at what this guy's able to do. His thinking, he got the woman out the.
I've never even thought about something like that.
Yeah.
But one of the cool things too is I've read a couple different accounts, and it happens with Howe that when the box comes in, because they have a lot of guys on these rigs, like 9 guys, some of them just bolt out the door. They grab their coats and their helmets and they go running to the fire. They don't even wait for the horses. The horses come out and they're getting out of the quarters in 20 seconds, a minute. If it takes you a minute to get out of the firehouse, they're going to ream your ass out because you got to go fast. So he beats feet. He's running to the box. They know where they're going, and they get there. And one of the good things is, as the company pulls up, they got a size up already because they've had a guy that's already got a look at the building, might have made a grab already, found where the hydrant is, all those kind of things. So that's one of the things they used to do in those days. And again, it comes back to the earliest responses back in 1865 when they started. There were no running boards. So when there was an alarm, everybody ran to the fire except for the chauffeur, the tiller, the captain maybe would be on the back of the pumper. But that was kind of it. Everybody ran. The chiefs ran. They didn't even have buggies then. So when they said they had to run.
I was just going to say, is that where the word run came from?
Yeah. To this day, they're still calling it a run, but now we have air-conditioned rigs. It's a little bit different.
Power windows.
Yeah.
Headsets.
Right.
So your ears don't. So you're like,
Oh
what?
my God.
20 years later, huh? What the hell are you talking about?
So back to Mr. Howe. Unlike the time when he rescued Gettin, now they write him up. And Chief Cashman put in his report the cool and courageous manner in which Fireman John P. Howe performed the work of rescue is deserving of the highest praise. And the following year on Medal Day, which is May 25th, 1895, he gets the Pulitzer Medal. And they're giving out the awards at Riverside Drive and 76th Street. If you've ever been up there, along the wall on the Riverside Drive, there's a big statue of an eagle. So they decided at one point that's where they were going to have Medal Day for a while. The cool thing about it, if it was downtown at City Hall, everybody liked that. But if you go up now, you're overlooking the river. and they could bring the fireboats in. The fireboats would be squirting water and
that's
doing
cool.
all the rest of it. They borrowed a house, and they were doing the life-saving corps routine, where they were going up and down on the scaling ladders, lowering each other on ropes, and all stuff like that. As a matter of fact, I think it was this medal day, after they did the demonstration, it switched to they're going to start doing something different, and they sent a couple of other guys, all right, go take the ladders down and all the rest. And a guy from one of the engines, I forget his name, but he was starting to take the scaling ladders down. Everybody had shifted their attention to the next thing, rigs coming up or whatever they were doing. And this guy falls with the scaling ladder.
I knew you were going to say that. You know that? I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, he got hurt, and that kind of puts a damper on medal day right away. But, it's unique. If you go to picture number 3 there, you could zoom in. Yeah, that's a newspaper clipping of the story in the medal. Again, this is so old. That's one of the problems with the really old guys. I love what they did, but except for an artist version of it, there's no pictures because the cameras weren't fast enough to go running around yet. They were about 10 years away from really getting good stuff in the street. But those are the guys that are getting the medals. That's where I got that picture of John Howe. He's in the middle there. And if you go to the next one, that is the Pulitzer Medal. And that was only given out. That was the World newspaper. That was Pulitzer was the editor, publisher. And I think he gave out 3 medals that one year, and then the medal was gone the following year. He didn't redo it. But it was an officially sanctioned medal by the department. That's an artist's rendition of what it looks like. I colored it in to make it look a little nicer. But if you can see in that, if you just go to 10A real quick, you can actually see there's the medal on his chest, and it has a white ribbon.
What's the one next to it? You got another one, I guess.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Oh, con chair, my friend.
Don't be hopscotching there, Kubi.
Yeah.
So now Mr. Howe has his first medal, and we can go to number 4, Tank. So now the cool thing about Howe is he doesn't stop just because he's got a medal. He keeps doing his stuff. Now that's a picture of Hook and Ladder 7, his company, right around that time. They still got the High Eagle front pieces and everything. Big, strong team of horses.
Wow.
They're doing a good amount of work in those days. And in December 30th, 1896, this is going to be the next time that John Howe gets on the Roll of Merit. Him and a fireman named William Cullen, both of Hook and Ladder 7, are able to rescue a man from a top floor room at 1120 Broadway. That's at 3 a.m.
There's another rig going away from it. It looks like an engine. I see hose on the back, I think.
Yeah.
Wow. Right in the back step.
Yeah, the good old days. So now January 2nd, 1897, this is when things really, really start getting crazy, and Howe kind of solidifies his name forever. It's one of those rescues that you just go, holy mackerel.
It gets better than going across the L.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's nothing.
Holy shit.
So they go to a fire at 94 Lexington Avenue. And Howe's driving Ladder 7 now. And in the tiller is this guy, Pearl. He's picture number 5. We can show James Pearl. So they're responding. What a classic looking guy. Again, with
the mustache, baby.
Civil War style hat.
Yeah.
And give me the Deed Nell kind of mustache. Yeah. And so they go to.
Paul, did you ever check out these addresses before? Like, did you ever check out the ad? Like, you giving out like 5 or 6?
Like these are so old. These buildings, I don't think too many of these are left.
They don't left.
Yeah, I used some of the sites that Kevin gave me in other ones, but I don't think they're there anymore. But as the newspaper said, as Ladder 7 bent around the corner, so if you can imagine the tiller rig,
yeah,
especially to civilians watching a tilted hook and ladder truck take some of the corners. It's amazing when you watch one end go one way and one end go the other. I remember as a little kid in Jamaica standing with my mouth open. How did they do that? And so that's what they're doing. You have Howe's up in the front seat with the three horses pulling away. Pearl's in the back. They probably have the officer with them, the guys on the running boards. And when they pull up, the entire rear of the building is on fire. It's at every window in the back. It's up, shooting up as high as the roof. So it's going from the cellar to the roof in the rear. And they see two men trapped at a second floor window. So Howe jumps on the brakes. They lock it up. They've got it in position, but he bolts. He's going and Pearl's following. And they go into the adjoining building. I don't know if there was a tree in the way or whatever. They're not going for ladders right away. But there must have been a decision to do this because they got a truck full of ladders and they're not grabbing the ladders. So that's what makes me think there must have been a tree or something. And they go into the building next door, which is a 3-story dwelling, and they go racing in there, and they get up to the adjoining window. Now, they're just far enough where you can just about reach them, but you can't. You know, it's just out of your hand's reach. And Pearl comes in behind Howe and grabs a hold of him. And if you go to 6, there's a picture. So you got that's Pearl on the left, standing up, holding on to Howe's belt.
One leg in the window, one leg out.
One leg in the window, one out, standing on the lintel. And he grabs one guy and pendulums him across. And they get the first guy out. Now he goes back to the second guy. And as he goes for the second guy, a third man can't wait anymore. And he jumps out onto Howe's back. And he's choking him around the neck. And this guy they said he was a slightly overweight gentleman. And, Howe's got this guy hanging on his back now. And he's looking down through the smoke because they're up above. You know, the fire started on a lower floor. It's taking the whole back, but it's also working its way to the front. So below him, there's smoke coming up. And as the smoke clears, he looks down. There's a friggin' fence right under him, too. So there's no room for mistakes here. And he's got this guy on his back. And Pearl is able to pull and yank him. And they fling this guy. When they had gotten to the window in the beginning, probably used his helmet. And he broke out a lot of the glass, but the whole window wasn't trimmed because they're trying to get these guys real quick. Well, they trimmed the rest of the window with this fat guy. So they just pull him in and they blast the rest of the window. And he goes in rolling across the floor. Howe goes rolling in across the floor. He still was holding on to the second man with the third guy on him. So it was like, boom. And it's pretty, it's pretty cool. They're stretched out 5 feet to try to grab these people.
Where did you get that drawing from? Where did you find that?
That was in the newspaper. You could put that back up, Tank.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty crazy, man.
Insane.
So he
They
goes.
even got the guy's mustache in there.
Right.
And they got the 7 truck on there, too.
Yep. So they pull the first guy in. The second guy jumps on him, and they put him through the glass. And now they're laying on the floor. And Pearl looks at Howe, and he goes, I think we should get the other guy.
There's one left.
So Howe goes back out the window in the same position with Pearl holding him. And he goes and he gets the last guy, and they go pulling him through. And so now Howe's laying on the floor. Everybody's smoked out and beat up. And Pearl looks at him, looks at Howe. And I worked with Bruce Newberry for years as you guys work together. When you work with somebody all the time, there's that little, you hardly have to say anything. You know how everybody's doing, you know how they're feeling. And Pearl looks at Howe and he goes, hurt? And Howe goes, nope, sick with smoke. That's all he said, sick with smoke. So Pearl goes, all right, I'll call the ambulance. the ambulance for you and that fat fellow over here. He seems kind of done too. So that was it. They
So
followed.
you grabbed what? 3 guys altogether, or 4?
Yeah, they rescued 3 guys out.
3 guys.
So now, probably because he was on the list and he's got these points, and now it comes time for Howe, and Howe gets promoted to assistant foreman, which is lieutenant, and he gets assigned to Engine 21. And on June 2nd, 1898, if we go to number 8 there, that's the Hugh Bonner Medal. Hugh Bonner was chief of the department for many years, had come up through the ranks, was an original member of the paid department, had been a volunteer beforehand, was beloved. Probably one of the smartest and best firemen in that era. He was also put in charge, Hugh Bonner, he was put in charge of civil service when that came in, to make sure that it was done fairly. Somebody endowed a medal in his honor, so it's still around, and it's probably the second oldest medal. So that in antiquity, so that's why they give it out. So now this is, I believe this is the first time the Bonner medal's being given out, and they don't have a big medal day ceremony this year for whatever reason. They get called to headquarters, because in that headquarters building there was a big giant like meeting room, public meeting room, where the fire commissioners could sit, the public could come in, ask questions, they could do training, whatever. It's a big like auditorium. They have medal day in there. And so James Pearl is awarded the Bennett Medal for holding on to Howe, and so they could save those 3 guys. And then they give Howe the Bonner Medal for the same rescue. So both of them are now standing there. So if you go back to that double picture, 10A, that's the second medal. That is the Hugh Bonner Medal on the middle of his chest there. So now he's got 2. He would end up with another medal further along. I don't have a picture of him with all those medals, but
Quickie won
pretty
that
cool
twice.
to find that one.
Did he?
He won it.
No, we'll get to that. He got the Pulitzer, and then they did away with the Pulitzer. He got the Bonner, and the Bonner stayed still being given out.
No, I was saying
lieutenant.
Billy Quick won. We used to make fun of him because it was obviously Hugh Bonner's.
The huge Bonner medal.
The huge Bonner medal. I mean, that's been going on forever, right? But Billy Quick won that twice. So we used to say, he used to break his chops all the time. That's why he won it. The huge Bonner.
Well, it's funny. Years later, I remember talking with Joe Angelini one of the medal days, and we were talking about the Bennett Medal. And I remember Joey clearly saying, I wish it was named after somebody other than a newspaper publisher. And I thought, wow, I guess so. I never paid attention to it because it was what it was. It had the name, it had the history. But I think Joey was right. And that's why in the long run, because he's got a lot of baggage, Mr. Bennett.
Yeah.
His newspaper had some very, very, by today's standards, crazy stuff about, pro-slavery and all sorts of, stuff back in the day. And he was not a nice man. But, he had a good newspaper, and he gave us our first medal. So for that, we're grateful. But some of his politics and some of his shenanigans.
Should have went with the Tony Bennett.
Yeah. Well, but now we have the Pete Gansey medal, so that's good. I do miss
a guy from Squad 288 got the first Gansey medal, so that makes it even sweeter.
Yeah, I just hate to see that. I don't care much about James Gordon Bennett himself. I could take him or leave him. He's a historic figure. He was who he was, but that medal was a gorgeous medal, and with the history behind it, it's a shame that it's just completely gone. But that's what they did. Yep. All right, so back to Mr. Howe. On December 20th in 1898 now, this is the same year that he's gotten the medal, so it's a year after his last rescue. Now Lieutenant Howe almost gets killed pushing a line in with his guys. He's moving ahead of them, telling them where to bring the line into the basement of a building, and there's a gas explosion. And he comes out with a burned face and no more eyebrows and stuff. So I think that was fairly common in those days. As we talked about, there was no odorant in the gas, so you didn't know if you weren't unconscious yet. The gas would slowly get you, and then it was building up. And with a building fire, there was probably a lot of these little explosions. So anyway, luckily, he doesn't get too seriously hurt, and he comes back to work.
Everything was gas. The lights were gas, right? A lot at that time, right?
Gas, yeah. Those that had stoves, you had a gas stove. The lighting on the walls was little gas tapers. The lighting in the street were gas street lamps. Things didn't change until Edison. Edison didn't invent electricity, but he kind of controlled it. But what he did is he came up with a filament where the light bulbs would actually be worth it. Because if you were used to gas, you just got used to that's how it was. It used to be that you had the little, like those little storm lanterns with the globe and everything. You had that on your table. Right. But they could get knocked over. So then the next step was they piped them into the walls so you weren't getting it knocked over. You went over and you turned the little key.
Yep.
Yeah, the little petcock, and it adjusted the flame. So you probably left it really low as you went to sleep so that it was just like a night light. And then when you had company, it got bigger and, all the rest. So now
whoever came up with that odor should get a medal, bro, to put in the gas, right?
That was a big move, whoever did that. So now Mr. Howe goes to, it's March 17th, 1899, and he's still working in Engine 21. He's a lieutenant there, and they respond to the Windsor Hotel fire. And as we talked about in depth on the Windsor Hotel fire, there was some of the most spectacular.
That was St. Patty's Day, right? Was that the St. Patty's Day one? I remember that.
Right in the middle.
That's why they got so many pictures. Yeah.
Yeah, the parade was passing right in front of it. So he comes in on 21 engine, orders them to stretch a line, and he gets in there and starts doing rescues. Now, I haven't been able to find in any of the historical records that I've seen or that I have exactly what he did, but his name was mentioned by Chief Binns, who wrote the report on it, and thought enough of what he was able to do with that fire to put him on the Roll of Merit. So that, that was a pretty big thing. There was lots and lots of rescues made at the Windsor Hotel, but maybe only a dozen people got put on the Roll of Merit. So that's kind of a.
Hey, Tank, go back to that picture for a second.
The one I just had up there of the hotel?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Take a look at the ladder. Look at the bow on the ladder from so many guys being on the ladder, man.
Yeah.
I was just looking. So somewhere, I could see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ladders I could see there.
Yeah, somewhere not on one of those ladders is probably went in off of one of those ladders is John Howe making some really great rescue or rescues.
Right.
We don't know exactly, but again, they're just looking at how amazing this guy is, that he puts himself in the right position. And then things, as it works out, things don't always work out the way you want. In October of 1899, Engine 21's responding, and a delivery wagon pulls out in front of them as they're responding. Now, I'm not sure if he was on the pumper or if he was on the he was on the hose wagon. That's right. He was on the hose wagon. And it's not like today. There was no red lights. It was a team of horses galloping at you and a bell. They had no red lights or anything like that. It was a bell, maybe a hand crank siren, but probably at this point just a bell. And this delivery wagon pulls out in front of them. So now you're driving this hose wagon and you have a choice. I can crash into this delivery wagon or I can try not to. And as he tries not to, he hits an elevated pillar to the elevated subway. They run into a giant beam with concrete on the bottom of it. And Howe and several firemen all go flying off the hose wagon. And they end up going to Bellevue Hospital all banged up. So luckily nobody got killed. But, that's a whole thing that we don't even really consider. We still get in vehicle accidents these days, but the vehicles are much stronger. There's riding positions, there's seat belts if you use them. That it's a lot better than a wagon with a bunch of horses screaming through the streets. And, it's cobblestones that stop your fall. You're going through midair and you're bouncing down the street like a rag doll. Matter of fact, the first guy in the professional department in 1865 that got killed in the line of duty got run over. And, he got thrown off the rig and run over by his own rig. So it's dangerous. You can get run over. You can get maimed by these horses. They're big, strong animals. They would park them in front of the building sometime. And if things got bad really quick, an explosion in the building or the windows fell, and the fire came out, the horses would get spooked and they would run. And then you got to try to stop them and all sorts of crazy stuff.
Paul, did you ever see
just maneuvering? I mean, he was able to maneuver it so he didn't hit it. I mean, that's a skill in itself. You don't have a steering wheel. You're moving horses from left to right.
Every once in a while, I'll see on social media or something. It'll be like a video from like you said, 1880, 1890, something like 1900. And exactly what Paul said. There's like 5,000 people in the street. And there's a guy in a little cupboard. He's cutting this guy off. It was just like a free-for-all in the street. And then I think they had the trolley car going down the middle. And, it's just like people are just walking around. Like you could see how people, there had to be people getting killed all the time. There's
go to the Philippines, bro. Go to the Philippines and get in a motor vehicle. And I'm like this, bro, because there's no stop signs. Everybody knows when to let somebody else go. There's people all over the place. I'm from New York, and I sit there like this. I'm like, oh my god,
that's crazy. Survival of the fittest.
Yeah, really there are no lights there. There's some stop signs, some lights, but for the most part, you go when you go. This guy's going this way, this guy's going that way. I'm like, Christ.
And they have flip flops on,
and then we're all wearing flip flops.
Yeah, Lehigh safety sandals. All right, so Mr. Howe gets back into business again on January 2nd, 1900 at 754 First Avenue, which was a big 6-story apartment house. Howe's working off a ladder. And again, I wasn't able to find too much on this. Every once in a while, the papers were pretty good on writing a good, exciting story. If something good happened, they would do it and get an artist to do a drawing of it. But once in a while, if there was other news or it happened on an off day, it just didn't make the papers.
Yeah.
But it said that while operating on a ladder, Lieutenant Howe was able to swing woman after woman from an uppermost window and pass them down to firemen below.
Who the hell is this?
So however he's doing it, he's yanking these ladies out and passing them, swinging them down. It's a lot like the circus of some of these rescues in the old days. Cirque du Soleil with leather helmets.
Yeah.
So then
I might have more medals than Hosh.
No.
Well, the cool thing is the next month he's doing it. They come
just constantly coming. Holy mackerel.
Yeah. So now it's February 17th, and at 38th Street and 5th Avenue, in the middle of a snowstorm, just to put a little added difficulty into the rescue. Again, while being held by a firefighter, and this particular firefighter was Andrew Fitzgerald, who, by the way, got a medal for the Windsor Hotel fire, but he's now driving Chief Binns. And that's one of the things the chiefs used to do. They would go get these really good firemen and make them their aides because they wanted a guy that knew firefighting, was really good, was brave, and because he would send them. There was no radio, so, Binns would say, "Hey, Andy, go in the back and find out what the hell's going on. And tell those cowards to push the line, whatever it is." And everybody knew who was the chief's aide. And when the chief's aide said something, you listened, because if you didn't, the chief would chew you out later, because that was my orders. But anyway, we got Andrew Fitzgerald again holding Binns as he reaches across and is from an exposure and is able to pull yet another man out of a building.
Dude, that's his shtick.
It is, and he's good at it. So he's a tall, lean, lanky guy, like not quite today's basketball players, but like a baseball player. He's lanky and he's fast on his feet, which is good. And then now he just made a rescue in January. He makes another rescue in February. This is all of 1900. And then the following month in March, he gets caught in a collapse on East 44th Street. They get caught as this building falls down. He's able to kind of dig himself out. He finds this other firefighter, and they can hear guys yelling in the pile. So they start crawling through the debris, and they're able to see a hole in the debris that goes down into the basement. One of the other things that is a frequent occurrence at fires like this is the basements would fill with water. If you got a good initial attack and you knock the fire down, that's one thing. If you went in there and made a push and the fire pushed you out, you went to water towers, they just filled the building up with water. When they knocked it down enough, they went back in with hand lines. So I think that's what happened here. They go back in with hand lines. Then the building falls down because of the damage that was done, the weight of the water and all the rest. But now they're looking down into the basement and they see water down there, and they could see men struggling in the water. So what do? Him and his firemen, they both jump into the hole down into the water to keep these guys from drowning. And they're able to clear the debris. They yell to other firemen. They're able to come over, and they hand up 5 men that obviously would have drowned. They would have got knocked out by the smoke. They couldn't save themselves. So him and this other fireman go save 5 firemen. And, it's a thing that you really don't think of these days. If you ever hear of a fire department drowning, it's at a scuba incident or
swift water,
a storm in high water or something. You don't hear of it in a building fire. But as a matter of fact, one of the most beloved chief officers ever, big-hearted Charlie Kruger, I think it was 1903 or 1904, he gets killed on Canal Street when him and his aide are crawling in to check out things, gets overcome by smoke, falls through a hatch, goes into the water. His aide jumps down and tries to save him, and he just can't hold him up. Charlie was a big guy, and he can't hold him up. He's getting knocked out. They pull the aide out, and they can't get Charlie out in time, and he drowns. So this was a real thing, drowning at a fire. So they saved those 5 guys, which is pretty amazing, actually.
This guy saved a couple of dozen lives here.
Oh yeah,
right.
And then they hear another fireman that's trapped nearby. So they start. Howe goes underwater and pops up. This guy is caught in the debris with the water coming up around him, and the guy can't get out. So in breath holding dives, Howe goes underwater and is able to free this guy from his boots. He's able to pull his legs out.
I don't even know what the hell's going on here.
Pull him
right,
and gets the guy out. So he rescues another one. So there's the.
How do we never heard of this guy? For God's sakes!
Yeah,
that's why we have history with Hashagen, bro. So we can bring it to the
just saying.
That's what we do on Wednesdays.
Right,
we learn.
Just didn't make like one grab. This is up there with the Smokey Joes of the earth. You know what I mean? Of the FDNY. Right. This is the guy.
That's Louis. That's why we're doing him. To me, he's one of the most amazing guys in the history of the fire service. He's on the roll of merit 10 times, and then I've already found at least 3 or 4 where they didn't bother writing them up. Yeah, where he said, "Don't worry about it."
Not old Howe again. We're not going to give one to Howe.
Yeah, Howe again. This is the 4th time this month.
Yeah.
So we know Howe was there, but whatever, dude. We got to give one to somebody else at some point, man. He can't have.
It's Hashagen. Get a Hashagen in here.
So shit. Unfortunately, at that fire, in the beginning. When Howe made that, when he jumped into the hole with that guy Cullen, Cullen and Howe had made a rescue back in 1896. So, he's working together with his ladder 7 guys, and they're making a difference. Sadly, at this fire at 44th Street, where they rescued all the guys out of the cellar, the Captain Grady of ladder 2, and firemen Bowen and Smith of engine 21. Are killed in the collapse. So as much as they are able to save all these guys, that was the down part, that as heroic as all these operations were, 3 guys didn't come home.
Could have been 10 guys.
Was he still
without a doubt, could have been.
Was he still in 21 at that time, or he was out of there already?
No, I think he's in a ladder company now.
He's in a ladder company.
I think so. But it could very well be because one of the guys is from Engine 21.
Yeah,
Two
two
of the
guys.
guys from Engine
Yeah.
21, and he was a lieutenant there. So he might be. I think he's still in the engine. Now that I think of it, he's still in the engine. They all got caught in a collapse. Sadly, those guys got killed. He didn't, and he's able to rescue the other guys. Oh, and just a little aside. And you have to remember that these guys are working almost a continuous tour of duty. They get off for meals, maybe a day a week. But you go home maybe 6 hours a day, 3 hours, 2 different meal periods. You get to go home. Most everybody lived as close as they could to the firehouse, so you wouldn't eat up your time off on a commute. But John Howe has 7 children.
Holy shit.
He's doing all this stuff.
Well, we know what he's doing on his 3-hour breaks. That's for sure.
Well, here's a classic.
He ain't just
woman
saving
alone.
women,
No,
bro.
he ain't no meals.
Here's a classic story for you. I'm working in Rescue one day, and we're downtown somewhere, and John and I are standing there, and this little old lady comes walking up, and she goes, "Oh, my dad used to be a fireman," and John is just so sweet. You know, he's all, "Oh, that's wonderful. Where did he work, honey?" and all this stuff. "Oh, yeah, it was horses back in those days," and all this kind of stuff. She goes, "Yeah, and he used to take that seltzer water for the smoke. You know, it would clear out the smoke, the seltzer water." Yeah. And he used to send me and my brother to go get it all the time. But he didn't like the seltzer water in the store near our house. We had to go to the one a couple of blocks away and get the seltzer water from that store.
Ah.
So I'm looking at Driscoll, who's got 9 kids of his own. And I'm going, after the lady's leaving, I said, why are they getting seltzer water from somebody else? And he looks at me like I'm dumb. He goes, "Where do you think all these kids are coming from?" He's home for dinner. He's sending the kids to the store, so he's got a couple of minutes with mom. That's what's happening.
He needed a dessert too. You know, you can't just go home for dinner. Send the
That's
kids out for the
4 course
seltzer water.
So that's how they lived before they got the 2 platoon system. They were only getting a couple hours a day, and you got maybe 2 weeks vacation or something like that. But you were at work most of the time. And
had to love the job, man. That's for sure.
Yeah, that without a doubt.
Holy, at that time, how were they, like, you know, back then nobody had jobs, maybe, right? To have a job like that was like a coveted thing, obviously, right? So those guys were making good money at that time, you think, or
yeah, they were moderately stable jobs. They weren't getting rich, but they weren't poor. It was stable because once civil service got in, I think the fire department did fairly well. But one of the reasons they have civil service is what was happening in the beginning, and it still happens to a certain degree. If the Republicans get in, they want Republican people in all the positions. If the Democrats get in, they want Democrats in all the positions. So there were people coming and going all the time. But you can't retrain a whole fire department and a whole police department. You want professionals. So when civil service came in, the idea was it's just merit. That's it. No political parties, no cronies, no friends. You know, do your thing. And that kind of changed the playing field because there wasn't this mass exodus after every election. And there were years, you know, back in the old days, sometimes the mayors were only a mayor for a year. So imagine switching parties and like, holy mackerel, you know. So there was a lot of that. But then Howe's doing well, just like his friend Gettin, who's a captain now. Howe gets promoted. So it's March. This is a couple of days after he almost gets killed in a collapse. That was on the 24th. On the 31st, he gets promoted to captain. And he's given command of Hook and Ladder 6. And at this time, Engine 17 and Hook and Ladder 6 are on Ludlow Street. And they are the busiest firehouse in the world at that particular time when he gets made in 1900. And one of the newspapers interviewed Howe and talking about all his exploits and the work and the company. And he tells the newspaper, not only are we the busiest fire company in the greater city, but the luckiest as well, for none of our members has ever been killed at a fire. This is a great record as we average from 75 to 100 runs each month. And as a matter of fact, when Howe gets command of Ladder 6, Hugh Bonner's son gets on the job in 1902, and they send him to Ladder 6. That Hugh Bonner is still being former chief of department or chief of department. Where do I send my kid? I'm going to put him with John Howe. Because if anybody's going to be safe, it's going to be working. You're going to learn how to do this job, and that guy's going to have your back. So
I think Ladder 6 has continued that as the luckiest house in the city, probably after history has played itself out these years.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, it's a great house. So it always was. The next fire that he gets to go to would be, perhaps we'll do that as one of the historical fires. They get a fire at the Williamsburg Bridge while it's under construction. So this is November 10th, 1902. And apparently somebody was lighting a pipe or whatever and dropped a match, and it set some rubbish on fire, and the rubbish communicated to the scaffolding. Now you have to remember, back in these days, there was no lightweight steel pipes or aluminum pipes. That's what the bridge was looking like.
Oh my
as
God,
they're
the
building
lumberyard.
it. So that is a lumberyard completely surrounding the bridge works. And they would run out the cables, and then they would hang things down and attach
Look
them.
at the blocks. See the blocks
Yeah,
there?
the first thing they would do when they had the two main structures for the bridge, they would shoot a line across, and they would build a walkway, and then they would build a roadway that got suspended. I mean, it was a long, drawn-out, very dangerous process for the bridge builders. And now the fire department shows up, and they have a fire that is free burning and just off to the races. And
No
there's
shit.
reports that there's a missing worker up at the top of the bridge. So Gettin is the chief in charge. He tells Johnny Howe, go see if you can find this guy. Go do what you can. So Howe and his company climbed to the top of the blazing structure. And as they reach the very top, they now realize that they are cut off because the ladder they just climbed up is on fire. So they're stuck up at the top of this bridge, and, they're yelling for help. They don't know exactly what they can do. And as you saw all the wood on that previous thing, this is no little thing. This is like a major bonfire, and you just put yourself in the spigot on the top of it. And not a good place to be. So ladder 18 runs to get ladders into position, and one of the fireboats comes up, and they had a Lyle gun on the fireboat, and they're able to shoot a rope up onto the tower. It shoots the projectile with a cord. You pull the cord up, there's a rope attached to it. They make it fast. And as they get a ladder up and the rope, everybody that's with John Howe from Ladder 6 and the other guys from the engines that went up with them, they are able to either come down hand over hand on the rope, or they're able to go down one of the ladders that ladder 18 is placed. So, you have to think too, at the top of this bridge was the workers' tool house. You're not going to be carrying like a wooden shanty for equipment. You're not going to be carrying this stuff back and forth all the time. So there's a little wooden shanty built on the top. 50,000 feet of lumber. That's what that encasement that we saw. And then 20 barrels of lubricating oil for the different machinery they use. That's what's burning. So the lubricating barrels are bursting, and now that oil's on fire as it's dripping down. And then there's also iron bolts, some of them as long as 12 feet long and 3 inches thick, that were being used to attach everything. They're getting red hot and dropping. So that as you're trying to find your way around, they have these red hot things that you could get killed by one of these bolts. And there's thousands of them that are stored up there that they're going to be using or are holding the scaffolding together and burning away. And these bolts are raining down. So, we think we got it bad today with all the plastics and everything. It wasn't so wonderful in those days either with the natural things that they were using.
I've never heard. My family grew up in Williamsburg. I've never heard a story of the fire that was on the Williamsburg Bridge. I had to set that thing back for a substantial amount of time, I would imagine.
It did. They had to bring engineers in to make sure what was left wasn't damaged, what was damaged to take out and to replace. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well,
man.
the towers are 365 feet high. And, it was just crazy that it took them a couple of hours to put this fire out. Finally, when everybody gets away and they're safe.
Wow.
And yeah, there's some of the aftermath of what it was. There's some deep charring in those timbers. There's a lot going on. So they had many hours of backbreaking firefighting, and blazing.
They weren't
timbers.
pulling out the sawzall either to cut that out.
No, that's right. You got a
Holy
handsaw.
shit!
You got a handsaw and an axe.
And
Oh
sore
my
arms.
God. Holy
Yep.
mackerel! That's some.
So they had blazing timbers that were dropping on them. Those the footwalks, all the scaffolding. Then one of the problems too is as they were moving along, trying to get up to put this thing out, the weight of the hoses, as you're bringing them up, if you're going up a tower that's 300 feet high, the hoses, to be able to overcome the head pressure and all the rest of it, the hoses don't want to go that far. The water doesn't want to come out when it's going up that far. It's really, really exhausting work, plus the falling hazard and all the things dropping on you, man. So this is back-breaking manual labor to go put a giant rubbish fire out that's around the bridge. It's a giant scaffolding fire. But they did. They put it out, and they eventually went back, and you could drive across the bridge today, and you won't even know that anything ever went wrong back in 1902.
Like it never happened.
Yeah. So now we go to 1903, June 18th. They had a former theater at 40 Bowery collapsed. It was being used. It used to be a theater, and it was being used as a box company. So they took the building, and there was a box company in there, and there was between 25 and 30 people working inside when this theater collapsed. Now being used as a commercial building after storage. So this is 1903. So ladders 6 and 8, engines 31, 9, and 12 respond, and they start digging people from the ruins. And I was able to find that photograph somewhere, probably where you can't see, up in the front of this is John Howe leading the operation. He's now a battalion chief. And I'm sorry, this right after this, he gets promoted. He's still a captain. He's the captain of ladder 6, and he's in there. Yep. They are able to rescue 10 people from the collapse. And this is a weird one because now in 1903, this happens, and his write-up doesn't get approved until 1909. So figure that one out. Somehow it gets lost along the way, and then somebody down at headquarters said, "Hey, whatever happened to that write-up for Johnny Howe?" Oh, here it is. So
another one.
Yeah.
They wanted to give Howe a break, is what they wanted to do. Get somebody else crying out loud.
It's like, don't we got other guys on the job here somewhere?
Yeah, he's just done that rescue, and a couple of months later now he's promoted to battalion chief, and he's put in charge of the 1st Battalion all the way downtown.
He's only got 13 years on the job, right? I mean, he got on a 90.
Yeah, so he's the very end, the last day, New Year's Eve, he gets promoted, and so now he's chief of the 1st Battalion. And February 8th, there's a really, really bad fire going in Baltimore. And they are calling Washington, D.C., all these other cities, and they finally call up New York City. And they said, "We need help. Can you send us some help?" So Charles Kruger, who I mentioned earlier, who would sadly drown later, there's a little bit of turmoil in the fire department right at this time. Croker, the fire commissioner, and he had gotten to a pissing match, and the fire commissioner won. and Croker was suspended. He was chief of department, but he got suspended, fired, whatever. They were trying to get him out. He starts a court case, and they go into court, and they're battling it out in the courts. But in the meanwhile, you still have a fire department. Somebody has to be in charge. So they make Kruger the acting chief of department. And Kruger gets the phone call, we need help in Baltimore. So imagine this. You're just talking, Lou, about how quick he's moved through the ranks. But Kruger doesn't hesitate. He calls up John Howe, who's only been a chief for
3 months.
a very short time,
Yeah.
a couple of months.
Hey, I know a guy.
He tells him, all right, we're sending you to Baltimore. You're going to the city of Baltimore, and they'll meet you. We have everything lined up. They'll meet you down at the ferry terminal. So the box comes in, and so this is February 8th, 1904. They have 2 special trains waiting. Well, what they have to do is they have to get from Manhattan over to where the trains are. So they go on a ferry boat. They go across. Most of the people, when they were responding, most of the companies, they might have got telephone tips or something when the boxes come in. You're responding to the city of Baltimore. But a lot of people thought that was a ship fire because there were many ships named the city of Chicago. They thought they were going to a ship fire. There were guys there that went. One guy had no socks. They just thought they were rolling out to a box. They didn't know they were going on the longest mutual aid that New York City would ever go on, and that they're going by train. So out they go, and they get down there. Howe's in charge. Doc Archer goes with them, and thank God Archer went with them because they had problems with the train. They got delayed. They had to fix a wheel on the train, got broken, all the rest of it. As they stopped, nobody brought money. These guys, it wasn't like you're walking around with money in your pockets if you're a fireman. Archer brought a couple of $100s with him. He was a rich guy, so he just grabbed some money. He knew he was going to Baltimore. So here's a civilian doctor that's an honorary fire chief and all that. He's the only one with money. He's buying everybody food and drink because nobody's just going to hand. I don't care that you're a fireman from wherever. I got a store here. I can't give you stuff. So Archer's buying them things. So they get down to Baltimore, and Chief Emmerich. Now, the poor guys in Baltimore, the whole city's burning down. And if you've been to the Firehouse Expo or whatever, that inner harbor, the southern part of that, I think it's Scuppers or something on the far
Scuppers,
end.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where Scuppers is, that's all on fire. So above where the museum is, there's ships, stores, the aquarium, submarine, all that's all on fire too. So Howe gets there. Emmerich's guys are shot. They can barely control this thing anymore. And he sends New York there. One of the good things is they sent a bunch of the pumpers they sent were big size pumpers. So they got the horses, they got a big gleaming pumper. And just when these things show up in the parts of the city that weren't burning yet, the civilians are finally looking at all this fresh equipment and fresh men, and it stops a panic because people were starting to flee. They thought the whole city was going to burn down. So they get put in a very dangerous position at West Falls Avenue alongside Dock Street. There was a stream called Jones Falls, and they were able to hang out there. They were being fed by a fireboat, and they made a stand, and they were able to stop the fire from, continuing. And John Howe said it was some of the toughest firefightings that he ever did, and that was after all his time in Lower Manhattan.
Yeah, coming from a guy like that had to be tough.
It must have been pretty bad. And he tried his best not to Monday morning quarterback it. I don't want to go into it. There's a couple of things he said were a little bit snarky, but he also realized he wasn't there when it started, and you can't blame the fire department if they don't spend money on it. A lot of cities, they don't want to spend money. You could go back and look at the different things in New York that we've talked about things. They wanted to get a rescue company in 1912 after the Equitable fire, and it took them to 1915 to even get that. So in New York City, like everybody else, nobody wants to spend the money. But long story short, they're able to help the Baltimore firefighters and the other firefighters from the other cities. They finally get the fire under control. Emmerich asks Howe if he would remain in the city. There's a cool picture of them there. If you go to 14, this is an actual copy of the telegraph that he sent back to Chief Kruger that they arrived in the city. All companies arrived, good shape. They were delayed. They're now at work on the waterfront. And that was from Howe. And he was sending that to Chief Kruger on Great Jones Street. And then 15 shows you them loading the rigs back up. They're getting ready to go onto the trains to come back. And then that next one has a nice, that shows you the fire. So that if you look at that basin that's there, that's all up in the head, the north part of that water there. All that shaded area, that was all on fire. That was how much of Baltimore they lost. So they had a substantial fire. And New York City did the same thing in 1835 and before that. You know, we had our great fires as well. So, but John Howe stays. I think we have one more. Yeah, that's a picture of what the city was looking like at one point.
Oh my God.
So it's kind of like the Great Fire of San Francisco or the Great Fires in New York. You only see, usually you only got to see oil paintings of it, but there are a couple of pictures. And that 18 shot, their tank is, that's all the New York City firemen there. And that's Howe shaking hands in the middle of the picture. He's got a blue cap on and a blue coat, shaking hands with the gentleman in the white helmet. And for those that can see it clearly, his eyes are bandaged. He's been in the smoke for a couple of days and he can't see a thing. So he's being led around everywhere. He's blind virtually from this. But he recovered and was chief of Baltimore for a very long time, highly regarded fire officer. So that's pretty cool. And
that's why we made the avenues bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, did you ever see the book, The Buff's Guide to the FDNY? This little book?
No.
Oh, this is a great book. It's a little thumbnail sketch on all major fires and stuff, and there's a breakdown of the city. And this guy Gus Johnson wrote this book years back, probably in the beginning of the 70s. And he put that Central Park makes an excellent fire break.
It does.
But if you look at it, look at poor Baltimore. That's what's happening. Even though some of those buildings are fireproof, it doesn't matter. The contents aren't. And you get in a firestorm, it's leaping from building to building, and the embers are flying. You can't stop it. If you don't have enough water, you're not going to be able to stop it. And that's what they did. We just came and provided them enough water in Baltimore, so their exhausted guys could.
How long did it take them to put that out once we arrived? A
couple days, I think. Yeah, I think we were there when they got to that spot. They stayed over the entire night battling the fire. We got there at the tail end. We like to think we put the fire out, but there was a lot of guys working many hours before we got there, and this was just. You know, they were all shot. This was one of the last spots. If we can stop this thing, we can stop it. And luckily, they were able to stop it.
So
one sad thing, though, one guy, Mark Kelly, from the New York City Fire Department, I believe he was an engineer from Engine 16. He gets sick, and he develops pneumonia. And that following June, he never got better, and he died as a result. You know, it can be linked back from getting sick when he was in Baltimore. So we did.
That Archer that you mentioned, is that where we get that medal from?
Yeah, Dr. Archer. We're going to do a whole show. We're going to do a whole show on Dr. Archer. That guy was everywhere doing everything.
Don't worry, fans. We got plenty more.
Plenty
of stories.
All
right, so
for God's sakes.
We're back from Baltimore. We're getting towards the end of Mr. Howe's career finally. On May 10th, 1908, You got men trapped at a fourth floor window at 214 East 65th Street. One guy's hanging by his fingers from a windowsill, and a ladder's placed, but it's too short. And good old Howe, he don't wait. He climbs to the top of the ladder, even though he's a battalion chief.
I was just gonna say, isn't he, Chief?
Yep. And he's able to grab the guy and lift him up and lower him down, and then guys climb down him. So he later gets a department medal for that. Just an amazing guy, right place at the right time.
That's instinct, man. Just
yeah.
Right.
But I think it was starting to take its toll on him because when the Fire Prevention Bureau starts, right after the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, one of the good things that came out of the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire was the FDNY Fire Prevention Division or Bureau in those days. And that's when they finally were giving the department, because you have to remember, there was the building department. They really were in charge of the buildings, and there was some corruption going on and palms getting greased and people looking the other way. And the with all due respect, you're not going into a burning building, the building department, they're just doing that thing. And a couple of people are getting their wheels greased and people are turning a blind eye. And after the Triangle Fire, that's when they beef up they start the fire prevention program, and the fire department is given more tools to be able to go enforce the fire laws and to start making changes for the better. The ladies' garment union started. All sorts of changes were made in the fire laws and for the better. And John Howe is placed in charge of the Fire Prevention Bureau. So I got to think that you have one of the most active firemen you have. They're giving him this job because he's been beat up. So now he's got a pure office job. And as John Howe does, he takes this job seriously, and he does a really good job. So he stays in there for a couple of years until it's time to retire. Like we said, he's got a house full of kids, and he's done his 20-something years. It's time to go. So it's December 24th, 1913, and John Howe's going to retire. We can just drop the 10A again there, Tank. And one of the firemen was interviewed by a newspaper reporter and asked about John Howe. And he said, Johnny Howe has a record of rescues and brave acts in times of danger as long as your arm. He is one of the most modest men in the department, and for that reason, only has 3 medals. If he were to tell you of all the brave things that he's done, he'd have to get 2 shirts to keep all his medals on. I love that line.
Yeah.
But that's what the men thought of him. That's from a fireman talking about a chief. It's like,
that's the greatest compliment you can get.
Yeah, the guy's that good that the men out and out love him. And then sadly, he passes away at home at the age of 44. So,
oh my God,
I think he got beat up by the job.
Hell yeah,
all those grabs, all that stuff,
no
the wear and
mask.
tear on his body, his lungs, and all the rest. But he was living up on East 93rd Street, and
pimp down. We can fix this part. It's okay.
You can cut that out there, Tank.
We got you. It's all good.
So sadly, Mr. Howe came to a demise at a young age. But when he retired, if you go to 21, when he retired, this is the only time I've seen this. There were other similar retirements of other noteworthy guys, chief of departments and everything. But this is the only time I've ever seen in the history of the FDNY that when somebody retired, they went on about his rescues, and it lists the 10 times that he is on the Roll of Merit.
Oh my God,
and
look at that.
And the 3 times he got medals and everything. So that's what the job thought of him, that when he retired, they went to that length to honor him. And that really is amazing.
That's why we got to keep having shows like that, because so many people. I never heard of the guy, for crying out loud. Louis never heard of the guy. I'm going to ask my brother. He's somewhat of a historian. Ask him if he ever heard of John Howe. That's why
Well,
we
you
gotta
know
keep
who's going to
having-
hear it, John Howe? Everybody that gets to see this podcast.
That's it,
Come
baby.
Hey,
That's
hey,
it,
Paula,
man.
do you know, by chance, I know it's probably a long shot, but if any of his kids ended up getting on the job, do you know?
Yeah,
if anybody
that I don't know. There's other names. I'm not sure. There was a Washington Howe. I'm not sure if that's his brother or a relative, but there's a couple of Howes that were coming up. But for my money, you know, we've talked about it before. The medals are all well and good, but that's really the only way that there's a record of historic
Right.
a historic record of valor, because you know, if you just fill out a fire report, says we stretch the line, put the fire out, you know, and this guy got hurt and that guy got hurt. But where are all those records? I mean, from every run that every company ever went on, you'd never be able to get through it all. But if you go to the Roll of Merit, which is published on the department orders, and you could start going through there and then find out when the fire is, and then go research the fire with the newspapers and all the rest, and you put it all together and you get a story about John Howe or whoever it is.
That's why I'm learning under this man right here. I'm taking
Hey,
all
Paula,
these
I
little
got another
things.
question that just popped into my brain. How come?
Sure.
Do we have? I mean, I know we just did Gansey, but like, you think we should have more medals from like guys from like the middle, you know, the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s? Like, you think like if there's a lot of extraordinary guys there, like, should we have those types?
How about the John Howe medal? I mean,
well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like most of them are from very early, right? I mean, most of those medals.
Right. Well, one of the things they did, and as a matter of fact, I think what you're getting at, should there be medals in honor of guys that have come in between?
Yeah.
So-
I mean,
Well,
yeah.
I think they just had a new medal for Neary, for Tom Neary. I think it was just given out this year. Tom
see, I didn't
Neary.
even know that.
Tom Neary was awarded the Bennett twice. He
See,
was
that's great.
a fireman and fire officer of renown. I got to meet him once or twice. He definitely, there was something about him. There's something about these people. When I met him, I was a young guy.
So that's good.
And I was just like, you know, holy mackerel. They just seemed larger than life somehow. He was a quiet guy, and I'll tell you a quick story about him. He was working overtime in 22 truck. I think I was in engine 74. There was a fire in a high-rise building, but in a workshop on the ground floor, and it must have been a carbon monoxide. He got knocked out. They pulled him out, and somehow they told me to stay with him. So I'm with an unconscious officer, and we get him into the hospital. He's out. He's breathing, but he's out. They do blood gases on him, and I could be wrong, but I remember them saying something like, 51 or whatever. And the doctor's going, he should be dead. You know, you're not supposed to have carbon monoxide levels like that. You know, that's crazy. And he sits up in bed. He looks at the doctors. He starts taking the wires off and everything's getting up. He looks at me. He sees I got a job uniform on and goes, "Hey, kid, get me out of here." So the doctor said, no, calm down. So then the fire department doctor comes in. It's this little old man. And so he sits there. He goes, "Oh, you're the doctor. All right, you're the doctor for the job." Yeah. So the doctor's, "All right, do this and do that and go home." And blah, blah, blah. "Okay, doc, okay." So as soon as he leaves, he goes, "God, let's go." He gets up, he gets changed, and we walk out of the hospital. And they said, "Well, that doctor said you're supposed to go home." He goes, "I'm not going to tell the doctor what I'm doing, and he's not going to tell me what I'm doing." So, boom. And he just left and went back to the firehouse and went back.
So that's
to work.
good. I didn't know that I'm kind of out of the loop. I don't know that they did that. So that's pretty good.
But you're still thinking along that line, Roof. See, you still got it.
You see, one of the problems, though, is unfortunately, I think there's almost too many medals.
Yeah, right. There's not enough.
If there's 50-something medals, that's a medal a week. And granted, we still do work. Everybody says, "Oh, we're not doing work like we used to," but they're still doing work. But that's a lot of medals.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So to keep adding them in, maybe if they lose their endowment or something. But I was glad to see Neary come along. You know, him. You got Jack Pritchard. He
got two of them too, right?
He got the Bennett twice. You have
trying to get that guy forever to come on the show.
Yeah, and when we talk about the Constellation Fire, that's going to be coming up. You have Dick Hamilton from Rescue 2, Rescue 3, and Rescue 4. He was all over the place. He got a bunch of medals. You had Medals Moran from Rescue 4. Medals Moran, I knew him a little bit, got to talk to him a few times. The other guys were a little
Medals
before
Moran.
my time. I didn't get to meet
Magic Tank.
them. Yeah,
Right.
Richard I got to work with. Gene Dowling, who got the Bennett in Ladder 25 and the Scaling Ladder Rescue with the Morgan Post Office Annex Fire. There's a lot of amazing stuff that's been done. And, that's why we're here, to enlighten.
We got to do it, baby.
That's
Keep
it.
that. We got to keep the names alive so that it's etched forever.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I only have one more question for you before we go.
Alrighty.
Out of all these people that we talked about, out of all these people you researched, if you can sit down and have lunch and interview one guy, who would it be?
Wow.
I got an idea who he's going to say.
Yeah?
Yes.
How would be on the short list? I would think of all these guys. I would think probably
Not you, Lou.
Probably
No.
John Binns.
Oh.
John Binns, who made the first Scaling Ladder Rescue, just because he was around for so long as a deputy chief that he went all the way into the 30s. And Smokey Joe Martin, without a doubt.
That's the one.
Smokey, probably Smokey Joe or John Binns. I'd have both of them. I take one to lunch, one to dinner.
There you go.
I mean, Smokey Joe, that's got to be hilarious to sit down and talk to that guy, right? I mean, it's got to be incredible.
I'm working on him. He's another guy that he made a bunch of rescues. I think he was on the Roll of Merit twice, but he moved up through the ranks quickly and was a chief for a very long time. And he was one of the few college-educated fire officers in his day. Plus, he was an old school fireman. He was old. Get the shit kicked out of you. Hence the nickname Smokey Joe.
I was going to say, you don't get the name Smokey Joe from not being an ass kicker.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I'd have to say those.
Especially from firemen.
Yeah. I mean, we don't call Tank Smoky Tank. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I say all the time. When the guys called Frank Posa, when they said they named the firehouse basically after him because he was the pride of Sheffield Avenue.
Right.
That doesn't come lightly. You know what I mean?
They still use it today.
No,
and they're still using it today.
Well, get that guy on the show, will you, Ruff?
Yeah, he's not in good shape now, unfortunately.
All right. Well, we got plenty more. So, like you heard Paul say, we're going to keep bringing them up so you guys don't forget these people. They can't.
Yep. And we have more big fires and more cool firefighters to talk about in the future.
Tell your friends. Sign up.
Sign up, will you? Tell your friends. You ain't getting this history anywhere on the face of this planet that you get.
Even those other kitchen tables, supposedly.
Well, there's some other ones, but Anyway, Paul,
often imitated, never duplicated.
Yes. Appreciate you coming on. We will see you again soon. Until then, you know what we say, fellas. Stay low and go.
Paulie, always a pleasure, my brother. See you at the big one, everybody.
Always an honor to be here with you, fellas. Fam, much love. We'll see you on the fire floor.
Established in 1930 and under the current ownership since 1987, the New Jersey Fire Equipment Company handles a complete line of fire department equipment and supplies. Headquartered in Greenbrook, the company operates full 3M Scott service facilities in Ridgefield Park and Toms River, staffed by 10 fully authorized Scott certified technicians with a fleet of 6 fully equipped service vans. All New Jersey fire technicians and sales representatives are active or retired firefighters, officers or chief officers, career and volunteer. They understand the business and the importance of their work. New Jersey Fire has represented Scott since Earl Scott entered the SCBA business at the end of World War II. Among other leading manufacturers represented by New Jersey Fire are Globe and Firedex Turnout Gear, Mercedes Hose, Task Force Tips and Akron Brass, Hygenol, Firehooks, Arctic Compressors, MSA Carnes Helmets, ChemGuard Foam, Alkalite and Duo Safety Ladders, BA Face Shield Protectors, Truckman's Choice Saws, Grove's Gear Racks and Washer Dryers, Supervac Fans, RPI, Streamlight, and many others. A New Jersey incorporated and based company, sales and service are limited to the state of New Jersey. Find us now at www.njfe.com. That's www.njfe.com.
ArmorTough Firehouse flooring was recently installed in station number 7, the newest of the DeKalb County fire stations in Decatur, Georgia. Meeting Deputy Chief Smith of Support Services, Vince explained that ArmorTough interlocking flooring is the only floor that is tough enough to withstand the abuse of fire apparatus, along with fire personnel at a very busy station. Chief Smith explained, "The flooring in all of our stations over the years gave us multiple problems. We need a floor that can last as long as the walls and the roof. That's why we chose ArmorTough. The installation team came from New Jersey, and in 3 days, they had completed their work without any disruption to our daily operations. We were very impressed with not only the product, but with the workmanship as well. I highly recommend ArmorTough for your station's floor." Call Vince today for a no-obligation quote at 908-917-7697.
The First Responders Center for Excellence is a not-for-profit organization dedicated to protecting the lives and livelihoods of first responders. Their education and research initiatives aim to bring greater awareness and understanding to the challenges to the health, safety, and well-being of firefighters, EMS personnel, and other first responders too. They are an affiliate of the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation.